take the December 4th meeting to order at 5:01. We got the approval of the November 25th minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of the November 6th minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then I'll let you do the introduction to Mr. Berg.
For those of you who don't know him, Gary Berg, at one time and for many, many years, represented the township as the township prosecuting attorney. Gary has expressed his willingness to take us on the Civil Service Commission as a client to make sure that, of course, that now again to review the actions of the commission and just to make sure we're within the boundaries of the act. So I know him for a lot of years. He's worked with both Republican and Democratic administrations. But I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Sure, my name is Gary Berg. I like to have the same name. I've been around for quite some time. I've been practicing for 31 years, so. And I had a great run as a prosecutor with this township. Enjoyed every minute of it. Kind of was sorry to see it go, but times change. So, yeah, so I'm very, very looking forward to working with the commission together with the officers, firefighter, and for the betterment of our community. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Gary, thank you.
May I? Just, I would just like to say that I've been here for now 11 months, I've been working with the commission for that period of time, and it's something that I thought that needed to be addressed, and I'm happy that we are moving in that direction. I think some of the issues that come across need to be addressed, and I believe that the commission needs legal representation to make sure they're in compliance with the civil service rules and the act. And I'm in full favor of this.
I wouldn't mind making a comment too. I've got to know Gary for 10 years plus probably, and I know he's a stand-up person and he's treated the township well, and I think he's a fair person. I think he's a great choice for you as a board to take, and I think we've developed a good relationship, and he's just a stand-up person. So.
Good.
I don't think there's anyone that I did wrong.
No?
Do we need to make a formal motion to hire him, or?
Well, I would make a motion that, yes, that we bring him on board with the commission for periodic reviews and advice.
Yeah, I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, welcome to the club.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Next on the agenda, we got Chief Covey. I like that. To address the commission regarding the upcoming testing.
So this is a two-part thing for me. Is we have several lists that are expired. We have only one current list at the fire department that is legitimate right now. Arlene, if I'm correct, right, it's the lieutenant.
No, you got chief and deputy chief.
Excuse me, those two lists, but it just got certified. Good point. Good point.
I'd like to say there's three
There's
now.
some concern with testing as we move forward, and it has to do with the date of eligibility. With the previous testing that transpired, the eligibility was based on the date of the test. I do have concerns regarding the date of the test being the official spot that we would go with. I do believe it should be possibly the vacancy of the position, or go with what the civil service local rules say is 2 years. And once the list expires, that goes into effect. Are you both aware where that says that?
Yes.
So my concern is that I believe with the point of the testing, that it leaves subject for myself as the chief or for the HR director to kind of handpick when the test is going to be. Therefore, it could make somebody eligible or not eligible to take a test. And I don't think that's fair. I think it leaves a little bit of gray area for myself and the HR director, and I don't like that. I don't think that's right. I think it should be either expiration of the test, as it states in the rules, or it should be the time of vacancy for the position if there's not a list certified.
And that's one reason why we, Mr. Berg, because this is one of the things that's came up in the past meeting. So, you know, that's something that we were definitely gonna consider and look into and make a decision.
And I definitely want in our department to get testing going forward, because it's very important to us with vacancies and positions to fill those sooner than later, but I just wanna make sure that when we go forward with this, that we have a clear, concise time of when the eligibility is.
So you think there's more manipulation of the date of testing?
And I don't think myself or Mark would do that, but my
Right.
concern is that
It could be perceived
It could be perceived that way.
It's true, exactly.
And what I don't like is the fact if I hold it for if I wait 2 weeks to do it 2 weeks longer or run it a week earlier, it's always gonna cut somebody off. The date of the expiration of the test, or the vacancy of the position, excuse me, or what the civil service rules set a concise moment in time. And it just makes me very concerned that that's a possibility.
I've already told the board, or, you know, the commission, that I personally myself, when it came to testing for lieutenant, because of the testing date was beyond eligibility for the test, you know, I had enough time and grade to test, but because of an arbitrary date, you know, I couldn't test for lieutenant. I had to wait till the next one, 2 years came up. So,
So really what's in play is expiration date, date of exhaustion, date of the test, and also date of the vacancy have kind of been used, and I think you're looking for, and I'm glad that's why, I'm happy Mr. Berg's on board, maybe that's something that can be.
And I also, you know, really appreciate Damon's input on this too, because I think it affects, you know, it affects not only the management membership, it also affects the union membership, and I think the union's gonna want some clarification of what we are actually using, so there's no confusion down the road.
Right.
And I think that I don't like any time that it can be questioned whether it's right or wrong. We need a definitive, this is the way we're gonna do it moving forward for when we do this versus it moving back and forth.
The trouble with that is, the reason that we got where we were with chief and deputy chief is because we don't maintain a list where we don't believe one will be used. And so the exhaustion and expiration date was back in 2015. So if you use those dates, then obviously that was, at some point, the point of ridiculousness which comes into play, saying that you needed to be eligible back in 15 in order to test in 19. And so those are the things that kind of come into play, where if that is the case, then you know, how should this be handled?
And that's where we really need some clarification, because I believe the membership, you know, wants to make sure that they have a clear, concise path of how it's supposed to be done. I don't want it to be in question whether it's what date we choose to run a test. I don't think that's proper.
I agree.
So I'd like to see some change, whether it's here at the table or, you know, but we definitely need to move forward with tests. We have vacancies in positions that need to be filled, and I also want to get the testing material out to those that are eligible to test, so they have time to prepare.
The list
and study.
expired in May, most of all of the other ones.
Correct.
So it's not like they're years past, I just want to make that.
Right.
is there any present openings for any of your ranks right now?
Depending on how promotions into the inspection division happen, being that Carl Wallace was our fire marshal, and the fire marshal position now is vacant, it could come from one of those, there's gonna be movement, yes, there's gonna be movement from the line and also from the fire prevention division.
So
So that it could affect
Is
up
there-
to 3 or
is
4
there-
people.
is there openings today? Is there any
Yes.
vacancies?
Yes, there are vacancies today, yes. And there will be most likely possibly a couple more, depending with retirements in the next 6 months.
Fire marshal is vacant right now.
Which, depending on how that fire marshal test runs, if the captain moves up, then it creates a snowball effect for the other positions. So
If it would please the commission, I would be more than happy to meet with Mr. Berg in my office to go
He needs to
over
be brought up to speed,
on
obviously.
what's been going on, and so that he can, you know, I think it's been a lot, I mean, just throwing this at him right now, he's not gonna understand it, so.
Mhm.
I'll give him a copy of the rules and then act. I don't know if you.
I think it would take an amendment of the
I
local
think
rules
so.
to make these changes, because the way they're spelled out now is basically at the expiration of the test. Those are
Or at the
eligible, 2 years
exhaustion.
are exhaustion of list. Expiration or exhaustion causes it to be frozen time. And I also don't think that's fair in the sense that if somebody has to wait Somebody could miss it by 6 months if we wait 6 months to a year, 2 years to take a test. So
I missed it by 2
There's a
weeks.
fine line in there,
Right.
so.
I missed mine by 2 weeks.
I get that, but I know,
So-
when we go from May to now, to run a test, that's a long period of time. Some people could become eligible, some may not, you know, so I just wanna make sure we have some clarification.
Just Chief, where would you want it to be? What would your ideal world be? Just throwing it out there.
I don't know if I can say the ideal, because there's always gonna be question. I truly believe that upon expiration, or if the list isn't current, if it expires, we need to run one as soon as possible. But the reality is the fact that sometimes it doesn't happen based on holidays, everything else that goes on with this type of business. But I truly believe that the expiration of the position is an important moment in time, if there's not a current list. I would love to hear what, you know, the union, the union's point of view or Damon's point of view on it. I think his voice is important because it represents that other percentage of the membership. It's not just me.
And if you remember correctly, we kind of thought that John Lyman would work through the end of the year and kind of at some point in June said, I'm leaving effective. He was working in June, but he was on the payroll until
Well-
July, so.
There is also another reason for testing is training, because I'm a believer that when you test, you learn.
Sure.
And even if there's not going to be any openings, I think we should, once the list expires, we should be testing.
I can tell you, there's very rarely in my career that I've seen it fall on the 2 years exactly,
Yeah.
just because it's a timing issue. I mean, timing's everything, and I don't think you're gonna be able to keep it current to the day every 2 years. I think it's an impossibility. And at one point in time with the economic downturn, there was no notice at all for movement, so testing was suspended at one point in time, and I think you were on board at the time.
Yes,
Just because it didn't make sense to run tests with where we
Well, I know,
were sitting at, so.
here's the thing, it costs, but on the other side of the coin, because of a sudden illness or something, you never know when there's gonna be an opening. I know there's costs to testing, but I think that we should keep all of our tests current. That's
There
just,
has to be maybe an if and then in there, because like you said, right now, I mean, you gotta go back in time when all testing was suspended due to a whole bunch of different reasons. You know, the township came to us and said, listen, nobody's doing anything right now.
Well, there was a freeze on even promotions.
Yeah,
at the time.
why spend the money on testing? So if that comes up again, if that scenario comes up again, we need to know how to handle that as far as like, we don't get into what we're into right now, because that's kind of how it all transpired, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I understand the premise of the conversation, I tend to think we're all going down the same road, which is as much as possible, you want concurrent lists. There's always a possibility somewhere, but I think if we kind of focus on the framework of what Commissioner Oliver's saying, kind of the framework of saying, this will be our process, and then to Commissioner Ettinger, but we also have some, contingencies just in case. And I think if that's clear, then that's something that the entire membership, everyone in the department can say, okay, this is a procedure. And if certain situations occur, this may be, and now it's, whether it's liked or not, it's clear. And that, I think, becomes the first issue. If it's clear and consistent, and then right, those are the kind of the three ingredients. So I think what's all being said to me, the union can concur with, which is we'll try to have a consistent process, and then a contingency plan for ifs and buts.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
They do that.
And the concern is, if you look at this document, the local rules, it's very specific. It says this is how you shall do it. And the problem is I don't truly believe we're 100% following local rules based on, we had an opinion that came in and changed our mind for the other testing, which is fine, it all is what it is, but that same opinion still exists out there. So if someone wants to come and contest that we haven't run a test since May, we need to have something figured out here that says this is how we're gonna move forward.
Gary's gonna figure that all out.
Yeah. I don't think it's a very difficult problem, I just think it's a problem that exists, and I think that we're gonna turn around and have someone walk in and say the same thing. I mean, it could be Damon, it could be Tom, it could be anybody, it could be any one of the members.
So,
Affected by it.
Matt, do we need this, just if we can have this wrapped up by the January meeting, or do you want to have something in between now and the end of the year?
I I would say by January. I mean, with the holidays coming, I don't think we're gonna be
Right.
busting the test out, dumping that on
Exactly.
guys, on, our personnel over the holidays, but I wanna get it running as soon as possible. I mean, I really
So why don't we get Mr. Berg up to speed,
Yes,
absolutely,
absolutely.
with Mark,
But most logical. Right?
Yeah.
and then, hopefully on the January meeting that is scheduled for the 8th, we'll have a little bit of, probably a little bit of a lengthy meeting, or, you know, maybe we can send some emails prior to see what direction we're gonna go, and then, you know, I think, like Mr. Damon said, is everybody doesn't have to agree and be like, this is exactly like how it is happy with it, but as long as they know that this is the process and it's fair to everybody, and this is what they see on paper, you know, I think that's the most important thing.
Everyone has degrees of rights. It
Right.
just can't be wrong.
Right.
Right here, everyone have different degrees of what they think is right.
Right.
And when someone can say, hey, this is wrong,
Right.
that's when the problem comes in. That's all.
I think that Arlene had a really good suggestion, so we don't slow the process down by waiting a month and. Go ahead.
I will contact the testing facility, get all the promotional exam testing information, study guides. I'll put it out to everyone.
Great.
You can decide if you're eligible or not at that point until we get the process started. You know, I won't do request to test until January, but you'll have all the study material. You can figure it out who, you know, if you wanna
They
start
choose
studying
to
or whatever.
proceed.
I think that's
You'll have the
important
study
because the time
material a
frames-
month ahead of
The
time.
time frame can be very short.
That's why I brought
and
that
There's a
up.
lot of material to study in a short period of time.
I mean, the rules are
That's
pretty
probably-
set as to who can test. I mean, we don't know. Eligibility in the list would be your furthest back, I guess, May.
Right.
Eligibility, 2 years on the rank and all that.
So if one desires to get started, they can. If they
Have
choose
at it.
not to, then
Everybody, I
they
would send
receive
it
the
to the,
information, and at that point, it's.
At least it's all fair on the board, no matter which way we
Everyone
ended
would have
up
the study
ending.
material.
Right.
Right.
And there's some more discussion I'd like to have with testing with, you know, sitting down with Damon and the group and looking at some, I'd like the material to come out a little sooner down the road. I think that the timeframe can be very tight for a lot of information.
Okay.
And some people could struggle through that, lot of information for a period of time, where they might need a little more time, doesn't mean they're a bad candidate or a bad person for the position, but I'd like to see possibly,
You would
we look at, you know, really.
that varies on the
it's-
testing
it's
facility though.
Giving someone ample time to really digest the material is important.
Okay.
But the testing facility has a timeline they have on their bibliographies for their tests. That, I mean, you
Okay.
couldn't hand it out a year ahead of
So
time.
if we knew
and
when
expect
this is
it to.
expiring, it could be a couple months ahead of time, we could say this is the bibliography for this test,
Yeah.
theoretically.
Mhm.
So it's something to look at
But
down
it
the
can't
road.
Okay.
be 6 months to.
But I think the key right now is let's figure out who's eligible.
Let's
And
wrap,
if we
yeah, let's
can do
wrap
it-
up the eligibility by the meeting in January.
Right.
We could get that all buttoned up. I think we kind of, you know, all agree that it needs to be worked on.
If you need any assistance, I know I would be available, Damon, I'm sure, could have a rep that could be available, I think
Okay.
we'd be more than happy to have those discussions if needed.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
Yes.
we- yeah,
Yes.
Okay. Any other voices on this topic?
Oh, I had something separate, but I'm not.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, you had something else to address?
Yes, it was a question raised to me, and I know we've been through this, Mark, before you, which was with Lou. I don't remember, Arlene may have the notes. Posting of scores after the test. I know we've addressed this issue, but I just don't remember what the answer was.
We did
One of the
address this.
individuals who,
Yeah, it's been posted in the past, I
Yeah.
believe.
so, well, will it be, I know it had been posted outside the, you know,
I
the
haven't
public
posted
place.
scores in a long time.
Oh, we haven't,
And so.
Where do you want them posted?
And I think that sort of becomes the conversation.
Can I, in the past, I can only go into the past, but before, when I wanted to know what the scores were on my tests.
Oh, I give the scores out there individually.
That's what I thought, is that I could call her and she could tell me what my scores were.
I'll give you your rate sheet. I mean, that's not I don't
Yeah.
think that's what he
No, that
wants
occurred.
everyone's scores.
Yes, I think which was asked yesterday in our union meeting, was asked about in the civil service portion of the rules, which state that the scores would be posted in a public place. So basically, what people want to know is what everyone scored to see the whole shebang.
Oh,
He wants
Is
a
essential.
composite list of everyone's composite score.
yeah, I understand what
Arlene
he's
said,
asking.
wait.
I think there's some mention of that in the rules.
There is, I don't know which way, I know it's been addressed before, I'm not really sure which way it went.
And I know there, and I remember there was conversations about internet being private, public, or public placement. So that's just, I'm just looking for, you know, an answer to that, because it was raised to me, and I actually didn't remember what came of it.
Good thing Mr. Bird got hired.
Yeah, we got Mr.
We've
Bird.
got two things.
Not for,
Testing.
let's start.
Okay, we will have that on the, look into that and seeing what we're doing now and
Yeah,
what the rules say and why are we doing it differently if we are.
Or if not, yeah, we just, it was asked to me, and my answer was, I don't know. So I'll ask.
Somebody wants to see how everything falls and like saying, okay, this is here and this, and be able to look at it, the big picture
It's a big picture,
versus.
instead of each individual having their own answer and their own scores.
And it takes out, you gotta hear saying, you know, hey, I got this versus I got that, everything's.
And I do recall them being posted, right, actually outside the door where the civil service kind of announcement board is.
Right.
In the past, they had been posted there, I just didn't know, there's a lot of conversation, I'm not certain where we went from it last.
Okay.
time, so, and I know everybody can answer
Was it
something.
posted on the township webpage in fiscal human resources for the eligible list?
Right, it could be there too, right, and that's, yeah, so we just, whichever way, you know, just kind of wherever we get to do it.
Pretty sure for the last incentives list, Arlene sent the whole composite to everybody.
I'm sorry, so
So I think for the last incentives list, you sent a whole composite to all the people that were on the list.
Oh, I sent it to the
Everybody
people that
that tested.
tested.
Good.
I don't have a problem
we're-
with sending the list with the end score, I don't have a problem with that, I don't know where you wanna post it.
And that's what I
No, I
think
think
more of
that's
the
what it
issue is, it's not like, is it hiding, it's like, well,
Where
where
you
will
want
we
it.
agree to put it, and where will people know to look?
Maybe on the
Well,
internet, maybe
No,
that'll be
we don't
able
want
to
that
spot
on
it.
the internet, do we?
And that's what I'm saying, see, this is where we get into the
I mean,
conversation.
right, yes.
Right.
If
Step
I-
on up.
Sorry, I'm Tom, I'm one of the chief reps. It's not gonna be so much of a big deal right now. The reason why we need that list is at some point in time, out-of-class pay is gonna come into play. And if we don't know the list, now we could potentially be harming some people that are supposed to be working in a, say,
Oh, I did
he's
send
off-
it to Nick,
he's off on vacation. We need somebody that's not a tenant to fill his
Nick
spot.
has the list.
All right, so we usually, in our contract, it says we go by the list first. So we don't know who's in order,
Good point.
Oh, I got you.
Good point.
we don't know who to move up.
I did send the current list.
Just for in the shift.
Yes.
And we have a current established list, but when that list expires, we'll create a new list, so it depicts the order of out-of-class pay, so a person stepping up to a lieutenant's position for the day. So,
Lieutenants.
Gotcha.
which happens
Okay.
on a
So the
regular
lieutenant's
basis.
not-
So-
So lieutenants on vacation,
On
there's a
the
step
list.
up.
With that being said, I'm just throwing this out here, as far as the scores, would that be something that we wanna just give to management, or would you want it all, everybody to know
Well, you let me,
I think it's
that? Here we go.
candidates may request and shall be provided interim results of their scores prior to the certification of the list. At the direction of the Director of Human Resources, individual test scores may be automatically provided to the candidates. Any scores provided shall be unofficial and subject to review prior to the certification of the eligibility list.
So that's basically what she does, so.
We currently do that.
Nick does have the current list
I do agree with your point though, I mean, I don't
for
know
chief
how.
and deputy chief.
As
The
certified by
quote
the
unquote
board,
fire
correct.
department runs, but
Yeah.
that would be
I'm sorry?
making
And
sense.
So
certified by the
those lists come in
The
the
list
key.
The ones that were
Right now, it's
included,
only
yes.
for lieutenants.
Yeah,
it's
Nick
really
asked for
key,
it,
but
I
at
sent
some
both
point,
of them.
potentially it could be
There's a posting for
a
it.
different ranks.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
It
correct.
might be in this.
Yeah, he said like
Certain
certain
locations.
It might be home.
There's
No,
one
it
in
doesn't
Public
say
Act
that.
78.
I don't see it. Where's that?
It's in Public Act
Yeah,
78.
Hang on a second.
He's saying it's in Act 78.
Yeah, it's in the
Damon
act
is.
itself, I believe.
Okay, because this is our local
Right.
rules.
well, we will definitely address that, cause I do think with the point that, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Tom.
Tom, I think the point that Tom made makes perfect sense. One reason why you need other than just, you know, who did better versus, you know, I'm better than you kind of thing. So, okay. Any other questions?
And I'm not certain, I know last month that we had a meeting and the conversation ensued and we're done with the situation. I think, but procedurally, it seemed like Mr. Nye had requested an amendment. I believe that the board decided to go against the amendment, which is the decision of the board, but I didn't know, under the board's rules, that it sounds like you have to make a vote at the following meeting. So I think it's more of a procedural issue than it's me raising a, hey, please review it. It's more like saying, hey, we received his request for an amendment, and per the commission's rules, we're just following the rules, and instead of voting it down last month, because the rules say you have to vote it down at the next meeting, I just think that would just be procedural, and would not raise any questions. If that makes sense, that was give you a little, if I could, 3 minutes, Mr. Burke, Damon, RNM Union President. It was an individual who brought forth an amendment request last month to the commission to amend seniority credit from prior service with a different department. Through conversation and discussion, the commission made a decision, which is totally their right. What I'm raising at this point is just a procedural part that the commission's rules state that they will vote on it at the following meeting. So I'm not looking to change or amend their decision. I'm just saying procedurally, it lines everything up, puts, crosses the T for lack of a better phrase.
I agree.
Where are you saying this is in the rules?
It's in the home rule, I think page 18. Is it page 18?
Okay, let me go to page 18.
I want to say page 18.
Thanks.
17 or 18.
There's actually,
17 or 18. You see it? Should be right there.
For this, yeah, all right, that was just,
Right, I'll pay.
He's asking for an investigation.
Yeah, he did ask.
He
He did ask for, yeah, so
He asked
the
for an
wording
investigation.
was wrong on that. He wanted us to investigate why
Well, I do
a
remember that.
memo of understanding was not made,
Well, I guess he does say.
and I basically said it was beyond our scope
I remember
to
that.
investigate that.
I thought he had requested for an amendment to be made, not.
No, there's no
An amendment to
mention.
what?
An amendment to the civil service rules to allow his Pontiac time to be added in. I thought that was a.
but he added,
He does say,
At the end of his thing here?
consider possible amendments to the local rules and table the certification of the department's list until matters can be more clearly resolved.
That's more what I was.
But again, you certified the list, the amendment, he's not, the question would be whether they have to certify the list again.
yes.
No, I'm not asking to change the process, Mark, at all. That's not, I'm not looking at that. I was just saying if an amendment was requested and it was denied, then procedurally you deny it.
We,
As the rules say. That's all I was saying.
and just from clear memory is that the discussion was more based on the request of
His
the
letter to
commission to conduct an
The letters in your
investigation.
packet.
And pretty much prior to even that meeting, we pretty much had made our decision, so,
I don't think there needs to be a vote on that,
no, I,
personally. I mean, we can,
I just was raising the point, yeah, I'm not, that was my recollection last meeting, and I just raised it procedurally again, and that's all I put it on the table.
this is something we can look into a little further, but, once again, Mr. Berg's here at perfect timing. I saw the point that, investigation and why a memo of understanding was not drafted for that particular person. We threw it back out to you guys to see if there was a memo of understanding to get it drafted, and nothing was. And I didn't think it was our position to quote unquote investigate why.
This is not, I don't disagree, I'm not looking into the investigation piece.
Right.
At all.
Right.
Y'all clarified that.
Right.
It's on page 20, just
Yeah.
the amendment piece.
Right.
The
So
commission may add a
the thing
regular special meeting.
is that, I don't even recall that there was an amendment brought up. The only thing we discussed was the discussion of the special investigation.
That's it.
And in my notes, I don't see anything that there was even an amendment requested.
If we did go through this and did decide to do this and did decide to go a different direction than we went, there might have been amendment that would have to be made for what we were doing. But we did not do that.
And I just brought it up, as I say, procedurally, because I just thought about it. Those two questions I brought.
Yep.
Hey, I don't know. It's been a long.
So, I mean,
This right here, where it says.
once again, this is something that I'm gonna have Mr. Berger look at, the letter, this is, he's brought into speed, and we will at least vote to address it at the next meeting. You know,
Makes sense.
at this point, I don't wanna say, no, we're not gonna vote on it.
That's why he's here.
That's why he's here. So in closing, Mr. Berg, thank you so much. Don't mean to throw it all on your plate all at once. Everybody else that came, I do appreciate it. And you're
I just wanna throw you
I
under
love
the bus.
it. I love it. How you doing, man?
That's good.
I was looking for the bus when I drove up. I didn't-
Is it? Well,
So the next civil service meeting is scheduled for January 8th. It should be a good one.
That's Act 78, I don't know if you knew that.
So we are dismissed or close the meeting at 5:31.
make a motion that we close.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.